Hello friends, this is a little video response in response to the gateway theory relating to most specifically to cannabis, but yeah, I guess it relates to all drugs. One thing that most people don't realize is that this tobacco cigarette is really the gateway drug. But we believe all this fucking hype that marijuana or cannabis, holy sacrament, is a gateway drug to other things. And this is all from drugwarfacts.org. You can click down there and read it for yourself, or just listen on and I'll tell you about it. Now, one, marijuana, gateway to other drugs. Analysis of demographic and social characteristics of large samples of applicants seeking approval to use marijuana medicinally in California supports an interpretation of long-term, non-problematic use by many who had first tried it as adolescents and then either continued to use it or later resumed its use as adults. In general, they have used it at modest levels and in consistent patterns, which anecdotally often assisted their educational achievement, employment preference, and establishment of a more stable lifestyle. These data suggest that rather than acting as a gateway to other drugs, which may have also tried cannabis, has been exerting a beneficial influence on most. The source of that was Thomas J. O'Donnell and Chibi Marbo Matar. Look at the link. 2007, Association of Drugs Use with Alcohol and Tobacco Use. In 2007, the rate of current illicit drug use was almost 9 times higher among youths aged 12 to 17 who smoked cigarettes in the past month, 47.3%, than it was amongst youth who did not smoke cigarettes in the past month, 5.4%. Past month, illicit drug use also was associated with the level of past month alcohol use. Among youths aged 12 to 17 in 2007 were heavy drinkers, i.e. consumed 5 or more drinks on the same occasion on each of 5 or more days in the past 30 days. 60.1% also were current illicit drug users, which was higher than the rate amongst non-drinkers, 5%. So if you use alcohol and drugs, or alcohol and tobacco, you definitely have a higher chance of using other drugs, not including cannabis. Number 3, according to the 2007 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, quote, the average age of a first non-medical use of any psychotherapeutics amongst recent initiates aged 12 to 49 was 21.8 years. More specifically, it was 21.2 years for pain relievers, 21.9% for stimulants, 24.5 years for tranquilizers, 24.2 years for sedatives. Quote, in 2007, there were 106,000 persons aged 12 or older had used heroin for the first time within the past 12 months. The average age at the first use among recent initiates aged 12 to 49 was 21.8 years in 2007. Most, 66.5% of the 900,000 recent cocaine initiates were 18 or older when they first used. The average age at first use among recent initiates aged 12 to 49 was 20.2 years, which was similar to the average age in 2006, 20.3 years. In 2007, the average age at first marijuana use among recent initiates aged 12 to 49 was 17.6 years, which was earlier to the average in 2006, 17.4 years. Among recent initiates aged 12 and older who initiated use prior to the age of 21, the mean age at first use was 16.2 years in 2007, which was not significantly different from the estimated 16.1 years in 2006. Quote, in the 2007 recent initiates aged 12 to 49, the average age of first cigarette use was 16.9 years, similar to the average in 2006, 17.1 years. In 2007, the average age at first alcohol use among recent initiates, aged 12 to 49, was 16.8 years, similar to the corresponding 2006 estimate, 16.6 years. The mean age at first use among recent initiates, age 12 or older who initiated use prior to the age of 21, was 15.8 years, which was the same as the 2006 estimate. Source, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, results from the 2007 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, National Findings. Number 4, Gateway Hypothesis, Research. Divinations from normative patterns of drug use initiation that involve the initiation of illicit drug use earlier than usual in the gateway pattern of initiation may carry small risks for dependence. But other factors seem to be more important in the development of drug dependence. Drug use and initiation are clearly nested within social normative contexts, yet neither adherence nor definition from this order signals highly elevated risks of drug problems in and of themselves. Although some violations are predicted by pre-existing mental disorders that seem to be more powerful risk factors for subsequent substance dependence. Although a gateway violation might be a marker of such risk factors, their association with gateway violations are relatively modest. In targeting intervention efforts, it would probably be more productive to screen directly for these factors, in other words, internalizing disorders, early onset substance use, than to screen for gateway violations. Source, I'm not even going to read it, dude. You guys read it. 5. Our results indicate a moderate relation between early teen marijuana use and young adult abuse of other illicit substances. However, this association fades from statistical significance with adjustments for stress and life course variables. Likewise, our findings show that any causal influence of teen marijuana use on other illicit substance use is contingent upon employment status and is short-term. Subsiding entirely by the age of 21. In light of these findings, we urge U.S. drug control policymakers to consider stress and life course approaches in their pursuit of solutions to the drug problem. Source, Van Gurdy, Carrion, and Reblon. Caesar J., Life Course Perspective on the Gateway Hypothesis, Journal of Health and Social Behavior. Number 6, the Gateway Hypothesis holds that abusable drugs occupy distinct ranks in a hierarchy as well as a definite positions in a temporal sequence. Accordingly, substance use is theorized to progress through a sequence of stages, beginning with legal, socially accepted compounds that are low in the hierarchy, followed by the use of illegal soft and then later hard drugs ranked higher in the hierarchy. One of the main findings of the study is that there is a high rate of nonconformance with this temporal order. In a neighborhood where there is high drug availability, youths who have low parental supervision are likely to regularly consume marijuana before alcohol or tobacco. Consumption of marijuana prior to use of illicit drugs thus appears to be more related to the contextual factors rather than any unique characteristics of the individual. Moreover, this reverse pattern is not rare. It was observed in over 20% of our sample. Source: Carter, Ralph E., Ph.D., Q. Michael, Ph.D., Kurisky, Leverett, Ph.D., Reynolds, Maureen, Ph.D., Clark, Duncan B., M.D., Ph.D. Predictors of marijuana use in adolescents before and after illicit drug use. Examination of the gateway hypothesis. Number 7. The results of this study suggest that general behavioral deviancy and not specific risk factors account for illicit drug use. When illicit drug use occurs first, it is very likely due to the opportunity afforded by the neighborhood environment in context of low parental supervision. The probability and rate of development of a diagnosis of marijuana use disorder and alcohol use disorder were the same, whether or not there was conformance with the gateway sequence. Evidence supporting causal linkages between the stages as specified by the gateway hypothesis was not obtained, nor were the specific risk factors identified that were related to consumption of each drug. Our results indicate that the efforts to prevent marijuana use should utilize strategies directed at averting the development of characteristic predominant to the manifestation of behavior problems. Source: the same one as before, number 7, or number 6, I should say. Number 8. Our key findings were that 1. There is no unique factor distinguishing the gateway sequence and the reverse sequence. That is, the sequence is opportunistic. The gateway sequence and the reverse sequence have the same protagonistic accuracy. And 3, a sizable proportion of the substance users began regular consumption with an illicit drug. These results, considered in the aggregate, indicate that the gateway sequence is not an invariant pathway and, when manifest, is not related to specific risk factors and does not have prognostic utility. The results of this study, as well as other studies, demonstrate that abusable drugs occupy neither a specific place in the hierarchy, nor does a discrete position in a temporal sequence. These later presumptions of the gateway hypothesis constitute what Whitehead referred to as the fallacy of misplaced connectedness, namely asserting assumptions about categories that do not correspond with the empirical world. Source: the same as number 6. Number 9. A study of the Journal of the American Medical Association on cannabis and its possible role as a gateway drug found that, quote, while covariance differed between equations, early regular use of tobacco and alcohol emerged as the 2 factors most consistently associated with later illicit drug use and abuse dependence. While early regular alcohol use did not emerge as significant independent predictor of alcohol dependence, this finding should be treated with considerable caution, as our study did not provide an optimal strategy for asserting the effects of early alcohol use. Source: Linsky, Michael T., Ph.D., et al., Escalation of Drug Use in Early Onset Cannabis User, versus co-twin controls. Number 10, other mechanisms that might mediate a causal association between early cannabis use and subsequent drug use and drug abuse dependence include the following. 1. Initial experiences with cannabis, which are frequently rated as pleasurable, may encourage continued use of cannabis and also broader experimentation. 2. Seemingly safe early experiences with cannabis may reduce the perceived risk of and therefore barriers to the use of other drugs. For example, as the vast majority of those who use cannabis do not experience any legal consequences for their use, such use may act to diminish the strength of legal sanctions against the use of all other drugs. 3. Alternatively, experience with and subsequent access to cannabis use may provide individuals with access to other drugs as they come into contact with drug dealers. This argument provided a strong impetus for the Netherlands to effectively decriminalize cannabis use as an attempt to separate cannabis from the hard drug market. This strategy may have been partially successful as rates of cocaine use among those who have used cannabis are lower in the Netherlands than in the United States. Source: Linsky, Michael T., Ph.D., et al., Escalation of Drug Use in Early Onset Cannabis Users versus Co-Twin Controls. Number 11, a study of Journal of American Medical Association on Cannabis and its possible role as a gateway drug concluded that while the findings of this study indicate that early cannabis use is associated with the increased risk of progression of other illicit drug use and drug abuse dependence, it is not possible to draw strong causal conclusions solely on the basis of the association shown in this study. Source, the same one as number 10, number 9, and number 8, I believe. Number 12, in 2002, the English government published research on the initiation of drug use and criminal offending by people in Britain. According to the study, quote, after applying these methods, there is very little remaining evidence of any causal gateway effect. For example, even if soft medium drugs, cannabis, amphetamines, LSD, magic mushrooms, amyl nitrate, could somehow be abolished completely, the true causal link with hard drugs, crack, heroin, methadone, is found to be very small. For the sort of reduction in soft drug use that might be achievable in practice, the predicted causal effect on the demand for hard drugs would be negligible. Although there is stronger evidence of the gateway between soft drugs and ecstasy cocaine, it remains small for practical purposes. My interpretation of the results of this study is that true gateway effects are probably very small and that the association between soft and hard drugs found in survey data is largely the result of our inavailability to observe all the personal characteristics underlying individual drug use. From the viewpoint, the decision to reclassify cannabis seems unlikely to have damaging future consequences. Number 13. Okay, source, Pudiheshivan Home Office Research Study 253, The Road to Ruin, Sequences of Initiation into Drug Use and Offending by Young People. Britain. Number 13. The World Health Organization reviewed the effects of prohibition and the progression from drug to another in its March 1988 study, stating, quote, the causal significance of this sequence of initiation into drug use remains controversial. The hypothesis that it represents a direct effect of cannabis use upon the use of the later drugs in the sequence is the least compelling. There is better support for two other hypotheses, which are not mutually exclusive, that there is a selective recruitment into cannabis use of conforming adolescents who have a propensity to use other illicit drugs, and that once recruited to cannabis use, the social interaction with other drug-using peers and exposure to other drugs when purchasing cannabis on the black market increases the opportunity to use other illicit drugs. Source: Paul W. Room and R. and Bondi S. World Health Organization Project on Health Implications of Cannabis Use, a comparative appraisal of the health and psychological consequences of alcohol, cannabis, nicotine, and opiate use, August 28, 1995. Number 14, according to CASA, National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse, there is no proof that causal relationships exist between cigarettes, alcohol, marijuana, and other drugs. Basic scientific and clinical research establishing causality does not exist. Number 15, that source, Merrill, J.C., and Fox, K.S., Cigarettes, Alcohol, Marijuana, Gateways to Illicit Drug Use, Introduction. Number 15, in March 1990, the Institute of Medicine issued a report on various aspects of marijuana, including the so-called gateway theory, the theory that using marijuana leads people to use harder drugs like cocaine and heroin. The IOM stated, quote, "There is no conclusive evidence that the drug effects of marijuana are causally linked to the subsequent use of other illicit drugs." Source: Janet E. Joy, Stanley J. Watson Jr., and John A. Benson Jr., Marijuana and Medicine, Assessing the Science Base. And 16, the Institute of Medicine's 1999 report on marijuana explained that marijuana has been mistaken for a gateway drug in the past because, quote, "patterns in progression of drug use from adolescence to adulthood are strikingly regular. Because it is the most widely used illicit drug, marijuana is predictably the first illicit drug most people encounter. Not surprisingly, most users of other illicit drugs have used marijuana first. In fact, most drug users begin with alcohol and nicotine before marijuana, usually before they are of legal age." Source: Janet E. Joy, Stanley J. Watson Jr., and John A. Benson Jr., Marijuana and Medicine, Assessing the Science Base. Basically, we have a situation where, and all of this came from Drug War Facts. It's a wonderful site that has a bunch of information on the drug war and what it really means to us. I'm going to go ahead and hold communion. I've yet to take my medicine this morning. And it just, I don't understand why people get so upset about this. Me personally, I live in California. I'm a Rastafarian, plus I'm a medical marijuana user. As far as I know, I live in the California Republic. And the California Republic says that I have religious rights. So, this is my right. Me sitting here having communion with God does not affect you. It does not hurt you. There is no victim. So therefore, there is no crime. Take your medicine before the feds take your medicine for you. It's ridiculous. I would hope that more states and more people get away from this gateway theory thing. I mean, really, everything that thing was saying is true. One of the main reasons that I use cannabis is because it helps me. It helps me to sleep. It helps me to eat. It helps me to have a better mood, and it helps prevent anxiety attacks. If I was not using cannabis, I would be using several pharmaceuticals that have very serious side effects, most of which I really don't need, because one of the main side effects is suicidal ideation. And I already have enough suicidal ideation. I don't need some pharmaceutical to, push me over the edge when I'm having a panic attack or something, or I've been in a depressed mood for a week or two, and I don't need a pharmaceutical to push me over the edge. And the one thing that I know from the two friends that I know that have killed themselves, one common thread amongst them, well, actually there's two. One is they had a perceived threat that they would not be able to see their children again. The second one was that they weren't, cannabis was not available for them. If they had had cannabis available to them, I do not think they would have taken their lives. And the world would be much better with Michael McNamara and Douglas Wheeler with us today. And their children would really appreciate it too. But I still struggle. Anyway, peace.